Good evening, good evening, good evening. We're 2 minutes late, but better late than never, as they say, unless it's a transfer involving Liverpool and Newcastle. Well, it depends what side of that transfer you're actually on, really, to be fair. So we're joined tonight so far by Glenn and Sully. And then hopefully the J man will make an appearance, but the Shay man definitely won't. He's stuffing his face with food, and quite rightly, I say it's always a good time when you do that. Sully, how are we?
Been better.
I know those days. Glenn, how are we doing, my friend? I'm a fantastic lip reader, but I can't.
I've been better.
Been
better in a footballing sense, Macca. That's for sure. Yeah, it's been hard times as a Brentford fan, as we'll get on to. But yeah, start of the season wasn't the most promising. That's for sure.
How are you doing? How are you doing, Macca? Talking down to us. How are you doing, my friend?
I would love to be able to sit here and say I'm talking down to you, but if I look down, I'm gonna fall asleep. I'm that jaded from work. But let's look at what we'll talk. We'll just talk about what happened in the opening week of the Premier League. Lots of stories and drama and controversy, etc., to talk about. And then VAR. We'll have a little bit of talk about that. We'll talk about Manchester United. We'll have a little bit of talk about the transfer situation, player power, etc., etc. See if we can jam the J man in there. Finally, with his nice green T-shirt, hopefully he doesn't have green screen. He clearly mustn't, because otherwise he'd be a truck or something. And then we'll look for the next week's games plus the Tonali picks. But the first thing we're going to do is we'll have a look at the results for this week. We don't have Shay to talk about. To talk about the Villa Newcastle game. It seems like you both called that one wrong, I think, didn't you? You've had Villa winning.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think it showed exactly. Like, I think that scoreline shows perfectly what these two teams are doing right now. Villa seemed to sleep at the wheel. They could not get going out of second gear, and Newcastle didn't have anybody to pass the ball up to. I mean, we were never going to score a goal in that game. Hats off to Anthony Gordon for putting a shift in up top. But goodness gracious, I mean, it's so apparent what our team's one issue is, and that's not having a striker, because ours right now is being a whiny. I'm not gonna use that word. He's just being whiny, So, I mean, it kind of played out the way I thought it was going to. I knew it wasn't going to be a high scoring game. Because Villa really only had Ollie Watkins as a threat, and like I said, he just never really got going. So, on my end, hopeful. I think Shay is a little bit more in the weeds about this one, but yeah, tough game, but it was clear and obvious what the issue was.
Now, let me ask you this: just in terms of the soccer stuff, we can get onto all the transfer business and the drama in a little while, but. It's easy to sit here and be happy having won a 4-2 game. If you're a City fan, it's easy to sit there and be happy. If you're a Spurs fan, it's easy to sit there and be happy. But it's game one. There's like 37 more to go. Do you think that, in terms of what Newcastle need, are you happy with the other things you saw? Were you happy with the defensive structure, with the fitness levels, with the motivation levels that you saw? Would you be encouraged going into the rest of the games as we start going forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Dan Burn looks like he's aged, like reverse aged.
Yeah, he did. He was like Benjamin Button there or something like that, didn't he?
For real. I mean, the tackles he was putting in. I mean, him and Shar put on just an outstanding central defensive performance. Nice that we can hopefully rotate Botman back in soon. But overall, yeah, very, very happy. Very happy with what I saw. I think Engela's going to be able to. I think that goal he missed was because of nerves, and that, I mean, just an incredible save coming up the side. He disappeared a little bit, but it's early for him. I think he's going to get it figured out. I was very happy with everything else that I saw. Just couldn't finish anything.
I mean, Dan Burn, I mean, he did really turn. Like, it sounds so stupid to say he turned back time, but because he's not that old, like he's
that one tackle, he came from the center of the park all the way to the left sideline and just, I can't remember what Villa player it was, just cleared him out. And that's the type of thing that endears a player to the fans. That keeps morale high. I mean, Dan Burn has been nothing but a wall for us. He's just been tremendous. And to see him have a game like that, kind of a throwback game, was very, it was invigorating to see.
Especially invigorating for Liverpool when we buy him next week. I'm only kidding. We're doing enough damage to it as it is by the looks of things. But overall, though, I mean, that is the beauty of week one, because you really only see how preseason went, don't you? You can't really tell who's going to win a league, lose a league on the first game. But it's good to be able to see where the actual issues are, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, completely. It's clear as day. We didn't win a single preseason game. We went something like 0-6 in our last few. So a result like this was outstanding, especially because you can put your finger on exactly what was the issue. I mean, it's something we're going to have to resolve. Hell, maybe throw Joe Linton back up there. I mean, just see what happens. Maybe he can go from being a striker to a great defensive midfielder back to a striker. You know, the double swap. So we'll see what happens. But I was encouraged by what I saw, especially given that we have one issue right now. And if we can solve that issue, we can play with just about anybody, I think.
Let me just ask you one thing before we move to the other two boys one more time. Lastly, rather, on this thing, you said Gord put in a shift up there. Is there nobody in the academy that, like, you know, the way Liverpool did with Bobby Dans? Like, is there nobody in the academy that could actually play a natural spot as number 9, or is it kind of it's a ready-made team almost?
I'm not aware of anybody in the academy. We have Willow Zula on the bench. Part of the reason we got rid of Callum Wilson was we thought we had Isak and we just needed another sub for Isak. So we're down our 2 strikers, like our 2 true natural strikers from last year. And unfortunately, Glenn, I hate to say it because I'm looking for as many allies as I can get on this pro Liverpool podcast. But I mean, that's kind of why we need Wissa, because without him, like, we're gonna be in for a long season. If you got JW, you shut your mouth right now. But yeah, so I mean, all we have to do, if we can figure that striker situation out, we're gonna be fine. But I'm not going to advocate watching Newcastle games this year. It's going to be a lot of low scoring, a lot of hard tackles, and a lot of defense, I think.
Now, let's, because I think it's a nice convenient segue there to look at the scores from the weekend. Now, it's kind of a nice connection there in terms of the striker situation, Glenn. Forest 3, Brentford 1. Now, here's the thing that I noticed, and we've talked about this tons and tons of times, and I would never denigrate Keith Andrews. He was an able servant for the Republic of Ireland, but he's also the set-piece coach, and now he's got the hot seat after an iconic manager left. When I watched that game, I didn't see much in the way of structure that you'd associate with Brentford. I know you've been decimated with players leaving and the potential for more to do so as well, but you would expect a new coach in his first game to have some sort of a plan, wouldn't you? Like some sort of, it might not work today, but here's what we're trying to do. Now, that's my outsider's opinion. Talk me through that game, Glenn, and do you think Keith Andrews showed you as a fan that there's something at the end of the tunnel here? Or do you think this is going to be one of the shortest managerial starts in the history of English Premier League soccer?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a good introduction as well, Macca. And good to see Tony, says he in the chat as well tonight. Yeah, it's a hard watch, wasn't it, as a Brentford fan, Mackie? If you watch the game, especially the first half, you would have seen a very, very one-sided encounter. There's no hiding from that. Nottingham Forest outplayed us in every department, right? Midfield, defence, attack. Chris Wood was excellent as well. And if you compare and contrast the 2 strikers, Chris Wood was on form and he was lethal. And although Thiago got a goal with the penalty, well-taken penalty, happy days, first goal for us in the Prem, I think, in terms of actual, physically imposing themselves on the game, very different kind of beasts there. I personally, Macca, wouldn't get too carried away with pulling big picture conclusions from this 90 minutes. There's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, Nottingham Forest are a high quality team. There's a reason that they were near the top of the table for the vast majority of last year. And although they've lost Elanga to our boys up north with Sully, they've actually also strengthened. And Ndoye looked brilliant, didn't he, on the right wing? He gave Rico Henry a real tough job, and he deserved his goal. What a header it was. So he had a standout game. The players they do have, that back line, Sells, Aina, Milinkovic, Murillo, Williams, I would argue is one of the best back lines in the Premier League. It certainly was last year, and that shows no signs of changing. And apart from I wouldn't say dubious, but apart from maybe a harsh-ish penalty, that's a clean sheet for them, right? You're going to Nottingham Forest through a team that are really good at home. Fans get behind them. And honestly, it was probably a top 4 or 5 worst fixture on paper for us. Going there, first game of the season with how disjointed we were. And credit to them. They played some great football and they deserved the win, hands down. And honestly, Macca, those first 45 minutes were pretty chastening as a Brentford fan. They were a hard watch. We were outfought and outplayed. Now, with that said, and with credit to Forest, if I was a Forest fan, wow, that's how you kick off a Premier League season. Brilliant stuff. For a Brentford perspective, I wouldn't get carried away. It's a new look team. It goes without saying the heart of the team has been pulled away. No Mbumo. Keeper's different, although Keller again had a solid game, no problem with any of the goals. Norgard is exactly the kind of player who you'd miss in a fixture like this. They're working really hard. You need somebody in the midfield to break up what Morgan Gibbs-White's doing, right? What Elliot Anderson's doing. There was nobody there to do that. Now, I would say that the 11 we put out was actually, even with the squad we have, is quite a weak 11. We have Kevin Schade, who was one of our better players last season. He's still kind of coming back from an injury. He played towards the end of he played a bit in the second half. We looked better with him on the pitch. Our major miss was Mikael Damsgaard, who was there for the birth of his partner's baby. So not only do they have the players that have been sold or are basically on strike, like Johan Wisser, who we'll talk about, not in the team, we actually didn't have 2 key players from our current squad. We've strengthened with Dango from Bournemouth, right? Huge fee for him. A bit much money, I think a lot of people would say, but hey, we're good at recruitment. Let's trust the process. So all I would say is this was actually a weak Brentford team in terms of, personnel that have left and personnel that have stayed. That midfield, Jensen, Yarmuluk, Lewis Potter, Malambo, Carvalho, there's no bite there. It's a soft touch midfield. And they were so easy to play against from a Nottingham Forest perspective. Macca, we had periods of the first half, 10, 15, 20 minutes, where we didn't get the ball. It was really, really one-sided. Now, how much of that can you chalk up to Keith Andrews? Well, it's not a good reflection of his first 90 minutes, is it? But there's been so much change off the field. It took a while to appoint him. I think we only had 3 proper preseason games. Teams were playing double that. Teams were playing triple that, these teams that were doing their preseason tours abroad. We had a really, really kind of shortened and jagged kind of preseason. And when all said and done, Nottingham Forest are going to beat a lot of teams at home by 2 goals, whether that's 2-0, 4-2, you name it. We weren't humiliated. Yes, we were totally outplayed. Yes, 3-1 might even reflect a little bit kinder on us than it should. But when all said and done, this was a weakened Brentford team under new management against a really fluid, cohesive, and very aggressive Nottingham Forest side. So I am not seeing this 90 minutes and saying Keith Andrews isn't good enough. I would take it with a huge pinch of salt and say he needs at the very least 10, 15 games to start putting these pieces of the puzzle together. And if by that point, it's clear that there is such a tactical gulf, which you're kind of implying between him and Thomas Frank, if that is really, really clear, and it's clear that we've recruited the wrong person to lead us, then we'll have those conversations. But Forest away, they showed up and they blew us away. And as a fan, that's really hard to see. But as a fan, you should also not overreact, I think. And it's going to be a hard season. I don't think we're going to get relegated. I don't think we're going to finish lower than bottom 5. But I do think it's going to be a really challenging start to the season. And it's going to be some really hard results. And we still, Macca, haven't ever been in the Premier League relegation zone in our time in the Premier League. And I hope if we get a positive result at the weekend, we can continue that trend.
Let me ask you this, though, because I think there is a tactical gulf between Frank and Andrews. But there was definitely an improvement in the second half. I think that was a bit clear. Forest may have taken their foot off the pedal a little bit and tried to hit on the brake, but nevertheless, Brentford seemed to kind of have a bit more heart about them, at least, and they weren't giving up, which is always a good sign. But nevertheless, if you go through a pre-season with a team, especially when you don't have as many games, as you say, which means you should be having more training, you should see the roots of a tactical plan come together. And that's what I'm curious about. Like, did you see anything? Because I don't think they didn't really play it a Thomas Frank way. It wasn't a very direct up and at them. And you're right. If you miss that, it's almost like Newcastle should have gotten Wissett. You should have got Joe Linton for the game, like in midfield. Like that would have probably worked for both of you. But it's you should see. I believe you should see like the fruits of a plan in the first game. Even if it doesn't work out, you can say, okay, so the fullbacks are going to do this. The double pivot's going to do this if you play double pivot. The forward's going to do this. Even if the personnel aren't there, they all get the same training. You know, they all make the same runs and do the same patterns. Did you see that? Did you see something that made you go, oh, okay, I can see what he's trying to do there, and I want to see more of it?
That's a great question, Mac. I mean, no, I think that was lacking. I think, you're watching it and, you really appreciate Thomas Frank's management. So you and I, despite me being the fan, are both watching this 90 minutes with, tactics in mind. And we're curious to see how Keith Andrews does. I don't want to let him off the hook here, but I would say that the personnel and the 11 players that we put out for this game is not going to reflect the team that we see moving forward. And with that improved team, we're going to see a clearer plan emerge, right? I think it can almost be a chicken and egg thing. Because it's like, okay, you have a good formation, but you have the players to make that formation work. You can, like maybe Manchester United, have an okay bunch of players, but they don't fit the formation. So that doesn't work. I think with this, honestly, if we have Sharda, Damsgaard, Dango come in, you could see a completely different almost front three or an attacking three surrounding Thiago for our next game, right? Jordan Henderson looked really good off the bench. Looks like somebody we really need. We could genuinely see Maka against Villa at the weekend, 4 different starting players. I'm really curious to see if any team in the Premier League this coming weekend makes more changes than us to their starting 11. Because unfortunately, regardless of tactics, whether they were good or bad, it was tricky to reflect any kind of solid game plan with a very inexperienced and very just like, there was unlike Forest, which every Forest player, Mac, for that 90 minutes, you knew their position, you knew their role, you knew what they were doing. It was the opposite for us. And yeah, I agree with you. It doesn't reflect well on Andrews that we came out and conceded 3 goals in 45 minutes and looked really messy. That's a failure of management. But I do think, to be fair to him, there is more than enough reasons why that was the case. And we're going to need to see, as I said, short to medium term, we've got to give him a bit of flack, because not flack, we've got to give him a bit of patience, because he's going to get flack from the fans pretty early, but that's going to be really unhelpful, right? It's just like, we've sold, if Wissa does go off, he stays on strike, Wissa, Bumo, Norgard, Keeper, Frank, it's hard to see another team in the Premier League that's undergone such reconstruction. And that's why people keep tipping us for relegation. I personally, as a fan, just want to trust in the process a bit more and say, all right, we're going to have a rocky start. Things might look messy. We might get beat this coming weekend. We probably will. Villa are way better than us. Morgan Rogers and Ollie Watkins against this team, they probably will feast. It's going to be about where we are in November and December as opposed to where we are August, September, because it's going to be hard.
Now, I have to say, it's probably half of it is I'm just jealous of his incredible mop of curly hair. But speaking of a guy with a fantastic mop of hair, JW, let's look at this here. A 0-0 draw in your opening game against, let's be fair, a very good Crystal Palace team, a very well-drilled Crystal Palace team. My suspicion when I saw it happen was Liam Delap if he's your first place striker, you're in trouble for the season, because he's a bench player at best at that level, at the level of a team that just won the Club World Championships. But is the story of the day still finding that number 9 for Chelsea and for a lot of clubs?
I don't necessarily think so. I think 0-0 didn't play fantastically, which is quite disappointing, coming off obviously the Club World Cup and then a strong couple of preseason games where we were really, really good. A few individual performances were poor. Enzo Fernandez wasn't great, but I think credit to Crystal Palace as well. They were probably unlucky that as a free kick, I didn't know that rule, if I'm completely honest, and did not see it as a foul. So I think we got away with one there. We dominated possession. We dominated XG. Crystal Palace are a very disciplined team, especially off the ball. and I think they had a really good game plan, and we just struggled to break them down. They were really good against Liverpool as well in the Community Shield. And the murderer's row of teams that they played against and not lost to, their past 10 games is just basically your top 6. And Crystal Palace hasn't lost in the last 10 games, kind of dating back into last season, in the last few games. So I think I would have obviously liked to be sitting here talking about a 3-0 victory, but that's not to be. I think we've still got a few things to figure out. One of them is kind of who plays up top. I think it was probably our Pedro game, given the Crystal Palace were fairly tight and they're not leaving us much room, especially in the middle of the park. We didn't really create much. The wingers weren't great, and then the kind of one shining light was ASTV when he came on. He looked like he had something about him. Snatched at a chance, but that he wasn't the only one. I think we're looking hopefully at a game next week against West Ham when they can be, if they're as bad as they were this week, then things may be a little different. But you can't lose it. You can't win it on the first week. You also can't lose it. 0-0, not ideal, but not the worst result in the world.
Now, in terms of, we talked about, Chelsea's squad depth is good enough that it should mitigate the physical effects of the Club World Championship. But nevertheless, your best players would have played in that, and then you'd want them to be playing in the first half of the season as well, obviously. Do you think that it may sneakily creep up on those players, and that Maresca will have to use a lot of rotation early on to give those players more of a rest? Or is it almost an attritional thing, like use those players up until they can go no more and then rotate? What do you think might happen with that?
I think time will tell. We don't have the luxury this season of being able to have a Premier League team and then a Conference League team like we did last year. So with the Champions League, the standard's significantly higher. We're going to have to rotate. I think the standard of the squad has been elevated since last year. There's a lot more players that Maresca can rely on. But I think one of the things we missed this week was Levi Colwill plays a very pivotal role in Chelsea's starting attacks, playing those balls into either Caicedo, Esteval, Palmer up the middle and really launching attacks. So without him in the squad, and obviously he's got a long-term injury, Tosin is a player that has kind of played that role in the past. He was injured as well, so we had to play Josh Chimpong in there, a young kid, a ton of potential, but just doesn't normally play that role in our defense. I think we're going to experience bumps along the road like that with injuries now, without the luxury of being able to give the players rest. And I think there may be players that emerge as starters like Palmer did a couple of seasons ago. I think Esteval will be one of them. But we're going to have to manage minutes, especially with the guys who've come off the Club World Cup. And I was thinking it would probably come and bite us around Christmas time when the fixture list gets more congested. I don't want to attribute this result to Chelsea being in the Club World Cup. I think if we fall flat against West Ham, then perhaps that's starting to take shape. But I don't want to take credit away from Palace, who were very good, just like they were against Liverpool. I think they may not be in the top 6 this year, but I think they're going to be better against better teams who are going to have the ball. They're tough to break down. They're a well-coached outfit.
I mean, the thing about Palace is, I mean, a couple of years ago it was Brentford. Before that, it was Brighton. And Fulham before. There's always that one club that happens upon a manager who has a plan and it suits that club. Maybe Crystal Palace is that team
for now, right?
Season. Yeah,
because
for now.
If they lose Gay and Eze next week, then that would have just been kind of unfortunate timing to play Palace.
Yeah, that's true. So let's look at the, City started off where, I mean, they started off solely where you'd want them to start off if you're a City fan, but they're playing Wolves, and many people's kind of bets to go back down again, back into the Championship. They're not looking like a team. I don't think they're looking like a team that can confidently say they'll be outside. Like for example, Everton could probably safely say now they're probably not going to be in the relegation zone. They've made a few decent transfers, maybe not stellar ones, but good ones nonetheless. Is City going to be the juggernaut again, do you think? Or is this, it's just a quirk of the league fixtures that they played Wolves in the first day? What do you reckon?
We got you on mute.
I don't think you're on mute. You just don't have a microphone in front of your face.
There we go. Yep.
That was the best miming that we've ever had on this show. In fact, across all of the shows.
Me and Glenn are 2 for 2 on this one. But I think last week, me and JW picked City to finish top 3 and Wolves to be in the relegation battle. And this game showed that. I don't think this was a test for City, even in the slightest. And I think this is what Wolves might need to get used to. It could have been worse than that. But yeah, I don't think there's too much to take away. I think we got to see City up City up against a real team, and see if Wolves can beat one of these bottom feeders toward the end of the table. So we'll see, but I don't think much to gather from that match.
Now I'm kind of trying to hold off the Man United Arsenal review because Io said he'd be on. But Glenn, I'll give this one to you. Spurs Burnley. I mean, that you saw what you were. Now Spurs has like maybe let's like say a better collection of individual players than Brentford, but you kind of saw what you're missing with Thomas Frank. They already look better defensively than they ever did under Big Ange, and it could only go better for them. And that's the kind of risk when you're a club like Brentford and you lose your best players, number one. But when you lose your iconic manager, you can only look on wistfully. There, it's like losing the girlfriend to the handsome chappie with the Lamborghini. You know in your heart you are made for each other, but you're driving a Skoda. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful term to Brentford, because you're certainly not a Skoda of a club. But nevertheless, there has to be a little tinge of jealousy there somewhere.
Yeah, well, we crashed the Skoda this weekend, didn't we? Really, somewhere around Nottingham. Yeah, I mean, if you're getting a brace out of Charleston, you've got to be doing something right as a manager, haven't you? These days, they look good. They look good, didn't they? Yeah, you can see a plan, and you could see it emerge. It was incredible. You saw against PSG, right? This brilliant tussle, this existential battle between Thomas Frank and his style of quality leadership and just being Spursy, and you saw those things, the movable force, movable object, whatever. It's like smacking each other where they did it so right just until the death, and then it fell apart. But Burnley weren't particularly mean opposition, were they? You look at that starting 11. Off the bat, it doesn't seem to be a starting 11 that will thrive in the Premier League. I'm certainly not in a position with Brentford to kind of banish other teams to the bottom 3 permanently, because that could well be us at some point this season, of course. But I just think I look at that Burnley team, I look at the Brentford team that we will have in a week or two, and I'm like, yeah, there is going to be a gulf in quality between those two teams, just in terms of personnel. It's no judgment on Burnley as a club or support or management, but like, there's not many players in that Burnley team you think other clubs would be swooping in for, right? Whereas Sunderland, for better or worse, they've invested very heavily. They've made what seems like some very good signings, and maybe a Dringer and Xhaka and stuff. And they, as we saw, brushed aside a pretty sorry-looking West Ham team. In terms of Spurs, Maka, they were just too good. You look at that back, you look at the team, there's quality everywhere, but that back 4, right? I think Thomas Frank will really get the most out of Pedro Porro, who's going to be revitalized this season on free kicks, corners and stuff. Romero, Van der Ven, the key for Spurs this season, as we all know, will be, can Romero and Van der Ven stay fit? Because if they can, and you saw the drop-off under Ange when Van der Ven was injured, they are 2 of the best centre-backs in the division on their day, right? Especially as a pairing. They're tall, they're quick, they're physical. They're really, really good. And it's no coincidence, right, Mac, that they both scored against PSG, because they've both got loads of aerial threat as well. And Jed Spence, again, is a bit of a player that seems revitalized the last season or so. It seems like he's turned things around at Spurs. He's gone from something of a weird outcast player to come right back in the fold. And then, you look up front, like Kudos looks like a really good signing. He was exciting, got an assist, looks really solid. again, you're getting goals out of Richarlison. Obviously, Solanke came on, and he'll be the target man this season. And I'll be really curious to see whether Solanke thrives under Frank, because I think he will. I think he's the kind of player, a bit like Ivan Toney, that Thomas Frank will really enjoy working with. And then Brennan Johnson, who ironically, Macca, is a player that Brentford chased hell for leather to get him to sign a bloody contract with us. And with good reason, he went to Spurs. But, we, under Thomas Frank, we were desperate to sign Brennan Johnson, and we didn't quite make it happen. He didn't want to come to us. That's fine. But it's really interesting to see Thomas Frank manage a player who clearly he identified as somebody he wanted to work with at his previous club. So really, you can see the pieces fit together. The caveat is, let's be real, let's see them face a bit more of a battle-tested Premier League team. Let's see them face 2, 3, 4 of them whilst in the Champions League. And let's see if it's as rosy then. Because honestly, if Brentford had Burnley at home this weekend, I would have hoped to at least have got a draw out of that, right? So it was a very convenient fixture for him. But when all's said and done, you've still got to do the work, right? 3-0 against any team in the Premier League is a really, really good result. And things look pretty rosy. I think the early signs against both PSG and Burnley, very different opposition there. Both matches, they've put in a really admirable performance. So it is looking good. And Mackie, you're kind of like underlying conviction that, Thomas Frank is this like excellent manager, which I fully share. Early signs are that we're kind of right on that instinct, and maybe he was ready for a challenge at a bigger club. And I want to see him do well. There's no regret he's leaving us. It's just sad, and it just leaves us in the lurch. But that's just the way football goes. So I would like to see him do well with Spurs, and I think he will.
And then let me just flip to the other side. Burnley was one of my picks for going straight back down. And there's nothing in England's brave Scotty Parker's management resume other than getting Burnley promoted that tells me he's a Premier League level manager, but probably very good in the Championship. And it seemed to me from the parts of the game that I saw that he's bringing Championship strategies and tactics into the Premier League. I mean, all know that doesn't work, does it? You got to adapt to the Premier League when you're in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think so. And again, a little bit like Brentford, it's tricky. You look at that personnel. I'm not seeing a huge amount of quality that screams Premier League in that team. You're seeing some experience, right? You see Walker, you see Dubravka, you're seeing players in the twilight of their careers who may well be additions to the team. I mean, I'm glad we've signed Jordan Henderson. I think he's going to be a massive asset for us over the season. So experience matters, especially for clubs that are in kind of transitional phases like us and Burnley to some extent. But yeah, I would say, Mac, and nothing that they showed in that 90 minutes did anything to change any preconceptions that perhaps Parker is an excellent Championship manager. I'm not going to say he's not good enough for the Premier League because he's got a whole season to show that he is, and he needs a squad to do that. But nothing tactically was screaming out, oh, he's got a plan. When this Burnley team, who was, I don't want to say big fish, small pond, because the Championship's probably the most competitive league in the world. But I would say that Burnley were unbelievable defensively in the Championship. And it feels slightly ironic almost, if that's the right word, that the second they have Premier League opposition, they ship 3 goals and they look at 6s and 7s, right? There's definitely, I think, honestly, to be simplistic about it, it just shows they are going to be testament, Macca, this year to the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League, which we all know is growing. And I think Burnley is going to be another example of that.
Now let's go back. I want to do the West Ham game there. Who did West Ham play again? Sunderland. That's right, with JW. The reason I want to ask you, Jay, is because you've got experience with Graham Potter, so you know the guy. I'm not convinced by him. I think if he wasn't English, nobody would care. You saw the wheels come off at Chelsea. Do you think the wheels will come off here at West Ham? Is he destined to be yet another manager like England's brave Scotty Parker and like many others who were, the next, ultra modern coaching methods hope for England, and then they just end up being nothing?
I'm not sure it's quite that. I think Chelsea's, I'd say, is a different animal to West Ham. Both demanding fans, but I think you're dealing with much bigger players at Chelsea, and he just didn't have the chops for that whatsoever. You could see it as soon as he walked in the door. They had very little respect for him, and he couldn't get a tune out of any of them. We probably kept him in the job too long. None of those tactics came through. It seems like with his West Ham record, I think they won 5 of their last 20 games last year without really establishing an identity either. So I think you're only as good as your last couple of appointments. I think Brighton is suddenly quite far away, and it seems like he was perhaps crowned by an incredibly well-run club with a lot of very, very young and talented players that Chelsea now own most of. And was it them? Was it him? It's seeming like maybe it was everything around him that was set up perfectly for him to succeed. And De Zerbi, like him or hate him, seemed to get if not the same tune, a very similar, arguably better tune out of the same crop of players as well, or minus Caicedo. So I'd be concerned if I was West Ham based on losing 3-0 to Sunderland. And it's only a game, but it is more of a trend with him. They haven't really bought anyone fantastic. They let Kudus go, and they're looking like they're going to kind of put the entire season on Jared Bowen's shoulders once again and hope that he can become Mark Noble reincarnate and lead them to keep them in the Premier League. They've got time though, and potentially if they pick someone up or pick a couple of pieces up between now and the end of the window, they'll be okay, but not looking good for them. And for Potter, he probably needs to turn it around in the next 2 weeks. Otherwise, he is going to be one of the likely ones to not make it to Christmas.
Now, I'm going to try some sort of weird magic now. If we talk about the Man United-Arsenal game now, I will show up. That's what my bet is. I'm opening this up to the floor, but I'm going to let Sully start talking because he's been waiting patiently there, dreaming about spending all the Isak money that Newcastle are going to get by the end of the week. But Man United and Arsenal, Sully. Here's my thinking. Ruben Amorim is his own worst enemy as a coach. He has good ideas on the game. Just it's not like he's Sam Allardyce or anything like that. He's got modern ideas of the game, but he seems to be one of those coaches that's incredibly stubborn in how he wants that game to be played and what formations are required. Arsenal scored from the Mikel Arteta special. Nice corner in there and a flap from the goalkeeper. I think it was a flap. I wouldn't like my goalkeepers to be doing I wouldn't like them to not be dominating their 6-yard box the way the United goalkeeper didn't dominate his. But nevertheless, United played very well, but they've always been played very well. They've always been turning the corner since Alex Ferguson retired. Are they in for a world of pain again this season, do you think? Or were Arsenal just lucky that they got the corner and then were able to defend for the rest of the game?
I mean, I think Man U having a lot of new signings really showed. I think a lot of their players had nerves. I mean, Sesko, the Gyökeres and Sesko memes coming out of this game were truly
Šeško.
See, can't pronounce anything, but Mbeumo had. He looked nervous. He had some opportunities, just couldn't put them away. But I do think I think Man U dominated. I think they're going to be fine once their new signings get comfortable. Arsenal's got to find another way to generate some offense. They have to figure out a different way to score, other than just being corner merchants. I mean, it's going to be an issue for them, I think, unless Gyökeres gets going here a little bit better. But flip side,
I'm really bad at this lip reading. I don't know what's going on with Sully there, but there we go. We lost you for a second there, Sully.
Yeah, Man, you couldn't even save my my Wi-Fi. That's how leaky they are at the back. Yeah, but they need to figure out a keeper. That's who they have to go get this winter, or with the last 12 days here in the transfer window. But again, I don't know how much money they've got left to spend. But Man U's big Achilles heel is going to be their keeper this year. I think their other players are going to get really comfortable. I think they're going to be just fine. Arsenal needs to score. Otherwise, they look well-rounded. They look like they're picking up right where they left off. But we know it's Arsenal, so we'll let them just handle it.
Now, Glenn and Jay, here's my question to you on Arsenal. If Mikel Arteta was English, would they be calling that Arsenal team the new Tony Pulis? Because they seem, I mean, it's not that they're short of any skill, but their main method of scoring seems to be set pieces again. And Tony Pulis and managers like that were mocked for that. But Mikel Arteta he gets the special treatment. They should be doing more, shouldn't they, as a team? With the talent they have, their style of attack should be a lot better. It should be a lot more incisive. And if they're relying on set pieces, they may as well have hired David Moyes, for that matter, to get, because they get the same results. What do you boys think?
I mean, they may as well bring in Keith Andrews, right?
No, there you go. Didn't go for Brentford, though. Sorry, Dan. Sorry.
I think he gets a lot of grace, Arteta, given how the style of play sometimes, but it is leaning more and more set piece, long ball. You'd want to see him vary up a little bit. They've got a little bit more talent. The midfield is a bit stronger with Zubamendi in there. Gyökeres didn't look great, did he? So I mean, Nanda Sheshko, it's early. We'll see what that turns into. But yeah, I mean, I think this is what, year 5 or year 6 of Arteta. He's not won a ton of trophies, and he still gets kind of included in the conversation as the best managers in the league. Like, surely that's going to wear thin at some point, given all the resources at his disposal. And he's at a club where the owner has given him a lot of leeway as well. He's not at a Chelsea where we pull the cord very quickly. But yeah, not the best start for them, was it? I don't know. I actually, I guess it shows the expectations you have of Man United. Man United losing 1-0 and not looking awful, and Kuna looking quite active. I left watching that game thinking, oh, Man United are better than I thought, even though they just lost 1-0, which is absolutely far they've fallen. It's been 10 years since they were good.
Glenn, what I would rate Thomas Frank over Mikel Arteta as a coach. That's why I think he has a better way of solving problems on the field. I think that's a big part of being a good coach. I don't think Arteta has anything other than gimmicks, and I'm basing that in a prejudiced way from that All or Nothing show on Amazon or whatever it was. Like he just came across almost like a Spanish Brendan Rodgers. A few too many tricks and gimmicks and psychological games. But what do you think? Do you think he is the real deal, or do you think he's kind of just getting away with it right now?
Do you mean when he was piping through, I think, You'll Never Walk Alone in the train?
Oh, yeah. I think there's another thing where he was cooking chicken for a team talk or something like that. I think the team talk we can all get on board with.
Yeah, I'd love that before a game. Someone's cooking us some food. Yeah, I mean, I think Jamie's analysis was awesome. I totally agree. It was almost inverted, wasn't it? The reactions to this game. The United fans came away feeling somewhat buoyed by a loss, and the Arsenal fans came out of a win away from home at Old Trafford feeling profoundly depressed because they put in a pretty underwhelming 90 minutes, which, as you said, Jamie, really underlines how far United have fallen if teams are winning away from home and still feeling relatively negative about the game they saw. With Macca, in terms of the management, he's got to prove more. For me, I feel like this is the season. The Arteta train needs to end this season for me in serious silverware. And that's not to, denigrate the FA Cup, which is a serious piece of silverware, but over the time of his tenure, one cup is not enough. And it always brings up is the Community Shield a cup or not question, because it's always the one he leans on.
Shield.
So
clues in the name, then.
Exactly. Try telling him that. But I think it's hard to say. I'd agree that I would say Frank's resume, despite not achieving the heights of Arteta in terms of silverware, makes total sense, because where would be the expectations for that at Brentford? He's gotten more out of the squad than I think Arteta's gotten out of a huge budget and a strong squad. I think the Gyökeres signing is really interesting, isn't it? I mean, there's huge pressure on him, and this is where some of the kind of maybe, I don't know, English Premier League superiority complex can emerge, because we really are going to see can the best player in the Portuguese league do it at a top team in the English league, right? And there's not really going to be any hiding from that discussion with him. He either scores goals.
Darwin Núñez.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
All the evidence we need.
Yeah, we've seen that. And you can't say anything from 60 minutes at Old Trafford. But as you said, Jamie, the debut was about as underwhelming as you could have with 0 shots on target or chances created, right? It was a pretty damp debut for him, which was meant to be this great unveiling of this, like, you know, heavy hitting, hardcore striker in Europe that every team who needs a goal scorer wants to buy. I guess my point with that, Macca, is that he is the piece of the puzzle that Arsenal, as we've discussed hour after hour last season in the show, haven't had, which is a goal scoring forward. If he is not the right signing, or it turns out he's not good enough, well, you've put the money in, you've paid 60, 70 million, whatever it was. He has to be your man. There's no excuses there. And if they can't get serious silverware, you know, Champions League, Premier League, you know, out of the season, you've just got to think, has Arteta reached his ceiling as a manager at Arsenal, right? And all his legacy, you know, the runners, you know, second place finishes, points away from winning the title, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't really matter. And if his legacy is an FA Cup in his tenure, which has been many years now, that would be profoundly disappointing for him. And I think that would be a bit of a black mark on his reputation as a serious elite manager. Because I don't know if any of the 4 of us would regard Arteta right now as an elite manager in the same league as somebody like Pep or Klopp or others, right? Arne Slot needs more time to really build that legacy, but already he's come in and won the Premier League, right? That's ginormous, right? I think there's huge pressure on this squad to perform, and you just get the sense, you get this like lingering sense with this Arsenal team, with the Arteta project, that as good as they're going to be in any given season, which is maybe second place, maybe third place, maybe first place for lots of the season, you always get the sense there's going to be one team, whether that's Pep or Slot, Liverpool, City, whoever, that are going to be better than them. This is the season they need to really prove their credentials and say, we are the best team in England and we finish top of the table. Because they could finish anywhere from first to fourth, and I wouldn't be surprised this season. But time is going to run out for Arteta at some point. And for me, having spent money on Gyökeres and having bought their target man, you need to be doing more than scoring goals from corners, and you need to be winning most games and winning the title. And I'm not convinced that's going to happen. I would say Liverpool at least are more likely to win the league than them. And Man City, based on the first 90 minutes we saw, I'm not sold on Man City, but based on the first 90 minutes against the very generous Wolves team, look like they have a bit more in terms of firepower and cohesion than Arsenal right now.
And then not to belabor the point or to show anybody up, but like if you're going to introduce yourself to the Premier League, score a goal like Hugo Ekitike did in your first game. It kind of that's the whole deal really with strikers.
Goal and assist.
Goal and an assist, yeah. What Gyökeres needs to do is get across the tips. That's the way to do it. Now, here's what I want to do now. I want to talk more generally. VAR. There was an incident in the Liverpool game where there was it looks pretty deliberate of a handball on the Bournemouth player for Liverpool. There was an incident was it the Leeds Everton game that was questionable. Was there one in Chelsea as well? That was
the Eze free kick.
Yeah, I mean, like throwing it out to the floor again. Whoever wants to jump on this as their soapbox. Is the Howard Webb era the most incompetent era of refereeing in English football in history? Because it just doesn't get better, does it?
I'd say that VAR decisions at least are quicker. And I think VAR removes a lot of the purity in the game. I think the idea is that, obviously, I'm not trying to sell you on VAR, but if the decision quality is better, we're willing to. There's a lot riding on this. We're willing to give up to a minute to get the correct decision, and everyone moves on forward. There was obviously 3 questionable decisions. I didn't think the Everton one was that bad, actually. Like, he clearly leant into the ball. It was going in, and his arm was not like completely tucked. I bet if Tarkowski hadn't fully leaned in, it wouldn't have been handball. But yeah, I mean, I think the rules change all the time, and I feel as though the players don't know the rules sometimes. The fans certainly don't, and so they're ruling or they're emphasizing certain rules that no one knows about. So we're left completely baffled watching the game. Why is that a foul? As a Chelsea fan, I felt very lucky. I think I mentioned earlier that Eze's goal got called up. I looked at it, I was like, well, Sanchez should have saved that, but never mind. 1-0 down. Let's see what we can do. And then suddenly VAR gets involved and says that Gahey was within a meter of the wall. I personally didn't know that was a rule. Shame on me. But yeah, it's not making the game better. It has the potential to. One thing I do like and obviously I live in the US. I've not been going to games this season, or we're only one game in. They borrowed from the Club World Cup, announcing to the in-stadium fan why something was not got overturned or whatnot. I mean, it feels like we were trying to not have the referees become celebrities, and now you're giving them a microphone and a voice. So it feels like counterintuitive a little bit. That said, match-going fans, one of the most common complaints was that VAR takes 2 minutes and I've got no idea what's going on until I look at my phone and understand why. So I think that's moving things in the right direction. But yeah, let's see how things improve. It's not been a great start for VAR.
Yeah, Sully and Glenn, what do you think? Are we fairly close to seeing yellow flags being thrown on the field of play for decisions?
I really like the announcing of the calls. I think that's one of rugby's best qualities as a sport. The referee has to explain to the stadium what the call on the field is. So I really like it, and I did think watching that Crystal Palace Chelsea game. I mean, to the letter of the law, yes, that was the correct decision by VAR. Now, my issue more is, why is that a rule? Like I remember the days of being able to plant yourself middle of the opponent's wall and try to work an opening from there. That was the soccer I grew up with. So I just missed that. I didn't see the other two calls. I mean, VAR confirmed an obvious red in the Newcastle game against the Villa player. But in terms of the Chelsea Crystal Palace one, I thought they got it right. I think it's a bad rule, though.
Now, I would love to continue talking about it, but we're going to lose Glenn soonish. So I want to get onto the forwards thing. We'll start with Glenn, Brentford, and Wissa. Players going on strike, player power, wanting to get their transfers done. Glenn, what are your thoughts on that before we lose you for the night?
Yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing, really, isn't it? The behavior of Isak today when it emerged, and Wissa. Yeah, it's difficult to see forwards who have been not only important on the field, but kind of talismans off the field as well, right? I feel like Isak has really embodied Newcastle's success in recent years. Incredible forward. Wissa, obviously part of this dynamic duo with Brian Mbeumo, has just been a real live wire with Brentford. And, off the field, it felt like he's got so much life and energy. It's such a shame to have this image of a player as a fan in your mind of somebody who cares about the club, who is part of this community, whether it's community in Newcastle, it's community in West London. Like, they're part of the fabric of the club. And when players or managers like Thomas Frank or Brian Mbeumo leave, like, that's really hard to take, right, Mac? Like, it really sucks when a favorite player leaves or retires or whatever. Like, it's like when Klopp left, you're like, well, it's the end of this incredible era. He's irreplaceable, and there's all the emotions that come with that. But when a player such as Isak or Wissa, and it's interesting that there's two sides of the same coin, and their paths are kind of entwined. It really is levels of kind of complexity to this. It's a very, very much an interlinked group transfer at this point, really, isn't it?
And we can all blame Liverpool for this. We can blame Liverpool,
who already have a new striker that's doing bits for them, right? They don't need Isak. It is almost heartbreaking and infuriating to see players just throwing the toys out of the pram. It's hard because I really want to see their point of view, and I really don't want to be the angry fan who shouts on the sidelines and doesn't understand the intricacies of deals, verbal
again,
deals.
something you can blame on Liverpool gone by this past weekend.
You know, you don't want to be a fan that just jumps on the bandwagon of frustration and doesn't understand that maybe soft promises have been made off the field. You just don't know the situation there. But you do know that when Isak makes that, you know, ridiculous post as he did on Instagram today, when Visser, who I feel has done the worst thing of anyone this transfer window, and deletes all his Instagram posts with any mention, with any image of Brentford in it, turns his profile picture black, I think, or whatever ridiculous tantrum he had. It really is hard, right, Maka, to not let that kind of, you know, really affect your image of the player as a person. And it's really challenging not to let that almost like dirty these incredible memories you have, right? You know, I have Wisser on the back of one of my shirts. You know, I've only got a handful of Brentford shirts, at least ones that fit. And it's so frustrating to see players do their best to really dig their heels in and force moves in ways that are almost self-destructive and have absolutely no respect or regard for the clubs as institutions or the fans as like personal supporters of these players. Like, they're two strikers who have been absolutely integral to both clubs' respective success over the last few years. And for them to willingly and proactively set that legacy, you know, similar to Trent, as Tony just said in the chat, and Liverpool, for them to willingly set that legacy on fire, to really kind of shoehorn and like muscle a move that may or may not have happened without this tantrum anyway, you do look at it and you think, how helpful is this to your case? Because all you're really doing here is you're burning a bridge at home, you're torching a bridge, and in your home club that you're still contracted with, they still pay your wages, you're still meant to show up and work. Like, it's a bit crude, but if people like us did this at our jobs, we would probably be let go and probably be breaching our own contract, right? It's not a one-to-one comparison, but it's frustrating. And if you're the other club, right, if you're Newcastle and you're looking at Visser's behavior, I know Newcastle fans have expressed this on their forums and stuff, and this will only be supercharged by Isak's behavior today. It's like, do we want to take a player that's acting so immaturely at their current club? Because what's to say they wouldn't do that to you? And I get it, right? If you're tongue-in-cheek and you're laughing like some in the chat about Isak, you're a Liverpool fan, right? You're like, get him over here. Who cares about Newcastle? Sure. But that Trent comparison that Tony put in the chat, that is a more apt, you know, parallel to the feelings that Sully and I have about these players who you feel have given everything to the club. They've performed week in, week out. They've given you so many amazing memories. And yet they're willing to set that legacy and that relationship on fire to force these moves. And I mean, yeah, I mean, people say in the chat, oh, people lied, there were soft promises, whatever. But, you know, again, the Trent comparison's a really helpful one, right? Because Trent could say XYZ about these soft promises or XYZ about these agreements. And obviously you guys as Liverpool fans would disagree with that, and I respect that. But for Sully and I, as fans of players who are doing this right now, there's something about running down a contract or forcing a move that just feels so cynical in an age where football is already consumed by money and, you know, conglomerates and state, you know, and all this kind of weird money, whether it's Chelsea, Newcastle, whoever. Like, there's already like so many gray areas in football, or just things that are really horrible about it. There's something so profound, I feel, about this player-fan relationship that you have as a fan between these best players. And like, I wouldn't get the shirt of a player I didn't like deeply admire and love watching. For that player to then kind of turn around and throw it in your face, it's just really hurtful. And I think it's really, really, really disappointing. And you can argue that, hey, they have a case to force a move because they've been told X, Y, Z. But I don't think that excuses the manner in which these players are behaving. And it reflects really, really, really poorly on them. And I hope in every case that these players do regret it, because it's just not a great way to, you know, make a move happen. And I just think it's so disappointing as a fan to see one of your heroes basically turn around. And it feels like, to me, essentially kind of spit in your face as a fan and say, I don't give an F about Brentford. I don't care about Newcastle. All I care about is the next thing. It's like, well, you're currently here. You can go with our blessing if you just have a bit of patience, if this gets worked out. And it's just this embodiment of player power that, you know, it's just another sad development in a league and a sport that feels so commodified now. You could argue this is player power, knowing their value, but you could also flip it and say, actually, it's players that don't have any respect for the institutions and the fans and the beating heart of football. And that's how I feel.
Are we going to lose you now, Glenn?
I can stick around for another couple.
Oh, awesome. So here's what I want to ask the other two boys before I knock every single glass off my desk right beside me. Is this a lesson? And kind of Liverpool fans learned this with Fernando Torres way back when. Is this a lesson that we shouldn't be getting players' names on our backs? The only real name that counts is the one that's on the front, on the badge. And we do kind of hero worship players when we really should know. It's been long enough now in the professional game since backhanders and envelopes under the table were given to amateur players, that every club is just a stepping stone, really. And you enjoy the players for when they are there, but in the back of your mind, you should always think they're going to screw us over. For Liverpool, it's always Real Madrid, almost always Real Madrid. But is this kind of maybe an abject lesson for every football fan not to get attached to the players? You don't follow the player, you follow the club. What do you think, boys?
Solly, go ahead.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, for putting us on the same team in this discussion, even though we're kind of screwing you over as well. I appreciate that. I did not know how bad Vissa had gotten over at Brentford. I did not know any of the behind the scenes stuff. So in that respect, I'm sorry. I have to apologize to Shay next time he's on who did we get from him? Jacob Ramsey, a homegrown player from Villa. Maka, in terms of hero worship, Liverpool, the only team they can ever get picked off by is a team like Real Madrid. There's a hand, on one hand, you could count the amount of teams. Glenn and I have to deal with the teams that are at Liverpool's level as well, and compete with the teams that are at our level. Liverpool is one of the biggest clubs in the world, are arguably the biggest club in England right now. There's levels to this. So as much as it breaks my heart, about Liverpool fans having Trent jerseys, it's a little bit different when half your team can get scooped up by that next tier of teams. So I don't mind the player worship. I something that pisses me off about Isak is he hasn't even put in an official transfer request yet. He's trying to get that loyalty bonus that him and his agent can split, which is absolutely nonsense. If you want to leave, put in the bonus, because Liverpool lowballed us. We're getting as much as possible for you, and if that means cutting out of your salary, then so be it.
Let me ask you this, Sunday, before I go to Jay, because this boils my blood a little bit as well. I mean, it's not like they're earning 120 grand a year, and the loyalty bonus will mean a lot, because that's how it used to be in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They're earning 120,000 a week, probably more. How much can a loyalty bonus be that you wouldn't put in a transfer request for it, right? I mean, and I'm saying that let's call this the bipartisan kind of view of soccer, because we're all going to suffer and we're all going to benefit one way or the other, to various degrees, obviously. But there is something to be said, because we had this issue with Henderson when he went to Saudi Arabia after wearing the rainbow captain's armband to go to play in a country where LGBTQ people don't have any rights, and to the extent where they're punished for being who they just naturally are. It seemed like the whole idea of I'm building generational wealth for my family. You've been on millions of pounds or euros, whatever, a year. What the hell have you been doing with that money that you haven't established generational wealth already? It really does point to greed almost being the biggest factor in these decisions, more than ambition, doesn't it? Because if you can't give up a loyalty bonus to go to the club you say you want to play for desperately, then it's not really about the club anymore, is it?
No, not at all. I mean that it's 100% bare unadulterated greed. And unfortunately, I think that's where we are with this sport now in a lot of respects. It's just a shame to see. Just to kind of put a positive vibe out there after all this negative talk. Quick shout out to James Milner. I think 23rd Premier League season that he's played in this past weekend. He's somebody like he's played for so many clubs that there's multiple fan bases that kind of claim James Milner, and everybody sort of looks fondly upon him. I think it's when you have a team that feels like, hey, we can build around this guy, and then he just gives him the finger.
And JW, here's why I want to come to you last, because to be a little bit controversial and spiky, your club is really the club that started all this, really, aren't you? Like way back in the Abramovich days, where he just vacuumed up players from, like Damien Duff was apparently gone to Liverpool till Chelsea came calling from Blackburn. Like it kind of started with that Mega Millions. Now, you didn't start it exactly. I'm going to say Blackburn started that with Jack Walker and with Alan Shearer and all that. But if they were the progenitors of it, Chelsea really at that point were the pioneers of how to do it right, because Chelsea just vacuumed up the best talents regardless of where they were. But now you've kind of come full circle almost, haven't you? Because you're not the big cheese anymore. Now City and Real Madrid can pick off the Chelsea players if they want. It's a tricky one, isn't it? It almost goes in cycles, but the only people who end up really getting rich are the players and the agents when it comes to it. Do you think?
Yeah, it is tricky. I've also whenever this happens, I'm also curious and like quizzical really about why the player is not more. It basically directs their cannons at their current team rather than the team that they want to go to. And like this is where I'll say Chelsea actually don't create a lot of this drama, at least this past couple of seasons, because typically you don't see these Chelsea transfer sagas drawn out hugely and a lot of drama with the players. We just get up and pants pulled down and pay the release clause and 100 million for you, 100 million for you, great, and it's still done relatively quickly. At least that seems to be the case. I'm actually quite confused why Isak is not more annoyed at Liverpool, saying like there's clearly been conversations that are going on. Newcastle want 150 million for you. Like, well, you clearly want me. Why don't you just pay 150 and I can be yours? Like that feels odd. That there is like, why won't you let me go for 120? Well, we value at 150. We'll happily let you go for 150. Tell them to pay 150. It feels like Liverpool seems to be getting off scot-free here, and Newcastle's dealing with a lot of drama, and there's domino effects for Brentford and whatnot. Feels like obviously Chelsea's clearly been in this position before and been in the kind of Liverpool role, just kind of trying to vacuum up all the talent. But it does feel like the cannons are sometimes pointed at the wrong person. And this could all be resolved very quickly if Liverpool just said, here's 150, done. You'd get your man, and then the other clubs, it would trickle down.
I mean, I agree. I'm not into the whole like let's be cleverer than everybody else in the room. If he's worked 150, played 150, and we all get him. Now I don't want to be losing lads before the end of the night, so let's go straight into our Tonali picks for the weekend. We won't go over your individual clubs' games. We're just going to show you the fixtures. We'll go with Glenn because he's been waiting the longest there. Glenn, out of this weekend's fixtures, Arsenal Leeds looks like a tasty one. Newcastle Liverpool. Obviously a tasty one between me and Sully. But who, Glenn, is your Tonali pick from that bunch of games for the second week?
Ooh, let's have a little look. A lot of evenly matched teams, which makes Tonali picks pretty tricky. We've got a lot of the bigger teams, well, maybe playing each other. A lot of the middle teams. I would love it, just based on our Arteta discussion. I would love it. Well, I don't like the club, but it would be quite funny if Leeds United went and got something positive at Arsenal. I mean, that to me is a Tonali's pick. I don't like Leeds, nor do I like Arsenal, but that to me would be a quintessential Tonali's pick if they went and got a good result at the Emirates. That would be very funny.
I mean, that would be a very Daniel Farke thing to do as well, to beat Arsenal, then lose to Wolves or something like that. Sully, have a look at that. Have a look at your oh, where am I gone here? There we go. Have a look at that and see if there's a Tonali pick that's not Newcastle against Liverpool.
There's that's going to be a bloodbath. I think for easy money, I mean Bournemouth Wolves. I think Bournemouth is going to shellac Wolves. I think Wolves stay in that relegation fight, and Bournemouth get 3.
Let me
that
see.
Can't be a Tonali's pick though.
Yeah,
we didn't upset Sully. Come on, that's the fundamental rule.
Has to be an
That's
upset.
why I picked Leeds. That's why I picked Leeds.
Oh, throw it back up. Sorry. I would say I think Fulham give Man U their second loss, and then we start asking questions next week. Fulham over Man U.
That would have been my pick as well. Jay, what's your one there?
I think Tottenham could give City trouble, and they're 2 top teams, but Tottenham's nowhere near the same league. I think that would count. If it doesn't, then I could see West Ham having a rebound and a rethink and getting something out of the Chelsea game on Friday.
Ooh, and it's a Friday game as well. That's great. I think I'm off at work finally early that day, so I get to watch a football match. Yay! That's a controversial one. But needless to say, because we want to get everybody out to the nightclubs that they're also desperately wanting to get out to, because we're all young men. I want to say thanks to Sully, Glenn, and Jay, especially for sticking around for the extra time. But we will have it's just good to have proper soccer back, and then we'll see what happens controversially over the weekend for next week. The rumors are Isak gets done after the Newcastle Liverpool game, because then it's the least political moment for it to happen. But Jay, Sully, Glenn, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it as always. For everybody else, it's Tuesday tonight, so keep an eye out for the morning coffee tomorrow morning and the Thursday pod for Liverpool related stuff on Thursday, and we will be back next Tuesday for more EPL shenanigans. Gentlemen, have a good evening, and we will see everybody else soon enough. Here is the funky music.